Is my
Hey there,
head?
there's Groove Stars Ridgely here, and I am super excited to be joined by a dear friend and colleague who has been an entrepreneur for a long time, the founder of the Emmerich Group, best-selling author of a number of books, including Thank God It's Monday, which is great for really getting people fired up to do their best at work. My friend Roxanne Emmerich, thank you so much for joining us today, Roxanne. Really appreciate your being here.
It is my honor to be here. Originally, we always have a blast together, so I'm sure we're going to have some fun.
Yes, indeed. And I know that you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. The rest of the people don't know the story. And you weren't always the entrepreneur. Actually started out more the conventional way. So tell us, how did you kick it off in this business world? And what led you to making the jump to, nope, time for my show?
Well, let's see. Well, if we go all the way back, I'm a farm girl from Wisconsin, so I was raised milking cows and baling hay, and we never had any money at all. My dad gave me 20 bucks and said, have a great time in college. And so I started hustling, doing 3 jobs at a time. Well, I always took 19 credits back in college. So when I got in, so when I got through college, I thought, how am I ever going to figure out money? Because everybody I know is in poverty, and poverty sucks. I've had enough of it, and I just want to figure out my way around this. And so I thought I'm going to go into banking because obviously I'll be able to see who has money, who doesn't. I'll be able to figure some things out. So I've always been a reader. I've been a voracious reader all of my life. And so I started off as the first agricultural lender that was a woman in the state of Wisconsin. So that was interesting because all the farmers would say, "Oh, they're sending this secretaries out with the loan papers now," which was always an opportunity for me to be gracious and say, "Well, actually," and then come to find out they kind of loved me because I was helping them direct the direction of their farm, because my gift has always been I can see where a business should go. I can see around corners. That's my gift. So I did that for a while, and then I moved on to work for E.F. Hutton and manage financial planning for them and large corporate accounts. And then this nice gentleman came to me one day and he said, "I'd like for you to start a de novo bank and brokerage." What a de novo basically means new charter, which really is code for you're going to be a complete and total entrepreneur with some financial backing behind you, but you'll start with no customers, no employees, no anything. And at first I thought, there's no way I'm doing this, Ridgely. Does this guy have no idea how much money I make? And then I started thinking about it. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, I decided to take the job before we even talked about salary. And so I finally called in and said, "I'll do it." And he said, "Well, don't you want to talk about salary?" I said, "Quite frankly, it doesn't matter. I just want to see that I can do this." So we went on to become the fastest growing, fastest profit bank in the country at the time. So people started asking me to speak about how to do it. And I started speaking, and while speaking, I started working with entrepreneurs, helping them move. I was never going to work with banks. I was only going to work with entrepreneurs and those who had a strong conviction for I want to be the best I can be. That's my spirit. That's what I want to hang with. Then come to find out I had some banks that did it. And so we attracted this whole banking world and other businesses throughout time. But we have many of our organizations that have come from really a challenging time to becoming a top 5%er within oftentimes 2 years, sometimes 3 years. But the consistency of it is what's fun because nobody understands there's a playbook, Richly. Who knew?
A playbook that gets people to that top 5% elite status, so to speak. But what was the thing? This is fascinating to me and many others. What was the thing that made you say, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm in? What
Ah,
was that?
yes, the bewitching hour, of course. Yes, I sat there and I thought to myself, I wonder if I could do this. I wonder if I could do this. And all of a sudden, like every cell in my body was vibrating that this was a heck yes. And I have learned to pay attention to those things. And so even though this made absolutely no rational sense, because I was still beginning my career, salary was important. I knew it was a stepping stone, and I knew if I can do this, then the world will be my oyster. And come to find out, it gave me a great opportunity because my gift has always been I can look at an entrepreneur and I can say, well, what if you tried this, and what if you moved that, and what if you did this little thing, and boom, they can move. And so actually, when I left being a lender, my boss had said to me, "I've had lenders come and go," and he says it's almost like there's a riot. They're going to be petitioning outside my door. about you leaving. That nobody wants you to go. They're all saying you made such a difference in my business. And that's what I've been all about. And basically when I work with the business now, I tell them you will be successful when you make your customers successful. But do your people really have the skills to get that done? And a lot of business owners give lip service to that originally. And they're like, oh yeah, sure. We had this little training program here. And I'm like, it's about mastery or nothing. You got to step up in this game and really be the source of wisdom. And so part of my journey has been taking wisdom into organizations and teaching people how to think at a whole different level, how to evolve their souls, quite frankly, in terms of getting them wrapped around and loving their customers and having their customers love them back. And that's the game, and everything else is noise. So, I used to read 2-3 business books a week. Now, quite frankly, I'm bored by most of them because it's the same old, because it's really not about that anymore. It's about the involvement of the humans. And yes, there's skills in marketing and skills in sales and skills about like how do you get people tied to the strategic plan. And as you know, originally we did the survey this last year and we found out that 75% of employees, when surveyed, said that they perform in the top 10%. So there's that. And so we show companies, you got to tell them how they really tie to profit. Otherwise, they're going to work hard, but you're not going to get to the promised land. So that's the kind of stuff that we've been up to. And here's the thing. I have so much fun doing this every day that I look around and thinking, why is everybody else not having this much fun? And so part of what I'm up to and part of my journey is getting people to understand, as Kahil Gibran said, work is love made visible. Get in there.
Love
Get
that.
in there.
Work is love made visible. Wow. What does that mean for you?
Well, that means that on Friday, I say, thank God it's Friday because there's only 3 days left till Monday. Because then I'll get to have an impact on more people and more profound days in a way where I'm masterful. And I'll get to have the joy that comes from that. I think about people are always like, well, when are you going to retire? When are you retire? I'm like, I am never going to retire. My great grandmother lived to 104. My grandmother got in an accident a few days before she turned 100. Otherwise, who knows what she would have went to. My mother's still going. I don't see myself in a walk with a walker and whatever. It's well over 100. And so, when you think about it, if from 20 to 60, that's 40 working years. But a lot of women will live to 100. That's another 40. What are you going to do? Sit around and watch television for 40 years? I mean, so you better learn to love work. And you love work when you're up to something. And for many people, work is a have to. And my whole journey has been about getting people to understand that work is a get to.
Yeah, I love that. And it sounds a lot like the work that you're doing when you're working with other business owners is more headspace stuff than actual mechanical stuff. Can you talk about that for a second?
Well, there's headspace and then there's heart space. And I just told the story when I was teaching Permission to Be Extraordinary to our executives last week about how I had an architect that was my top client back when I was in banking. And he came to me one day and he said something and then he walked out. And what he said to me is he said, Emmerich, you're pretty powerful. If you ever figure out how to make that journey from your head to your heart, you're going to be something. And he walked out the door and I'm thinking, head to heart. What is he even talking about? I have no idea what that even means, which meant it was about time I figured that whole thing out. And a big part of what I'm doing now is getting executives to understand the journey from head to heart, about how to get people engaged, because it comes up from their toes, not because it's a survey that guides it, not because there's rules that make it happen. It's like, who do you have to be as a leader of leaders? Who do you have to be to have people who want to follow you? How do you keep your energy going in the right direction? How do you keep yourself clean? I don't know how many hours you work, Ridge. Sometimes I've been known to work a few extra hours. According to my husband, he tries to straighten me out occasionally. But I keep saying to him, oh, what am I going to do? Like play at something that's not quite as much fun, and I have a play life and I have friends and I get out and I do all those things too. But the key here is like, are you up to something big when you're up to something big? And for many people, they've lost their purpose, they've lost their way, and they don't believe that they can have the breakthroughs. Whenever I teach Permission to Be Extraordinary, I've had so many CEOs who have been through that course and they were like a bottom quartile performer in their industry. And they will say to me that this course gave me the belief in myself that I can be a high performer. Well, come to find out, many of them are now top 1% and 2% performers, which is pretty big deal when you come from the bottom 25%. Yes. So I mean, it's like, do we shut the doors or do I become the revered? And that's what I'm saying. It's not just the marketing. It's not just the sales. It is the marketing and the sales. You got to get that stuff right. It is the strategic plan. You got to get that right. And most businesses don't get that right. And so those things matter, but there's a thing that matters more and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's really getting that done. And I think, I don't know, Richard, if it's happened to you, but I've been stuck. You know, I think we get stuck as entrepreneurs, and it's kind of like, now I'm stuck again. I can feel myself. I'm the hamster on the wheel. Here we go again. I've lost myself, and so whenever I lose myself, I just say I've lost myself. But I see it in other business owners all the time. I can see it. It's like they just lost themselves. They're not there anymore. They forgot the why. They no longer have a vision. During the Great Recession, I would talk to CEOs and I would ask them, so tell me, where do you want to be 3 years from now? Give me the specifics. They couldn't tell me. They had lost the ability to dream because all they knew was firefighting. All they knew is how hard it was. All they knew is that they couldn't win. So when like new clients would come to me and I'd ask them where they want to be, they couldn't even articulate that. So I'd finally just say to them, I see that you've lost your ability to see the future. And we need to start there. And so, and you know what, I get it. You know, somebody's taken away the energy from all of us at some point in our lives. I think I told you the story one time originally about how I had a 4th grade teacher who dressed me down one day because I was being boisterous, and I lost my voice until I got to college. I became a shy, introverted kid that wouldn't speak up because I saw what happened if I spoke up. Luckily, I got over that, right? But yet, you know, somebody chips away at everybody. And this isn't the kind of stuff we talk about in the business world, but it is the thing. You know, you can teach them skills all day long, but it's not going to matter when they don't believe in themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And so if you were looking now, based on all that you've picked up and learned, at the top characteristics of successful entrepreneurs, what would you say are a couple of those that stand out?
Boy, that's the $1,000,000 question.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because they're different. They come in different shapes and sizes, Rich. But you know, I see that when people are doing to prove it to daddy or mommy that they're okay, that only takes them so far. It takes them quickly to that point, and then they plateau. And the only way through that plateau is to get about making a difference in the world. And so I think that keeping that focus in on, I am honored to be able to make a difference in the world. And for that, they pay me really well. So I think there's that for entrepreneurs. I think there's a real passion for taking care of their team members. I remember when my husband sold his business, he never promised anybody anything, but he went around and he gave gigantic checks to some of his team members. Some of them fell to the ground crying because they couldn't believe they would ever see that kind of money in their lifetime. Well, he felt so good about himself that he could do such a thing for somebody. I think that's a characteristic. I think there's an altruism for an entrepreneur. I think the money grubbing entrepreneur keeps hitting the wall because if it's about the money, it bounces back. The karma bounces back on that. If it's about the contribution, the money just keeps coming. So I think that's the big thing. That, and you know, there's got to be energy. And I see people that don't take care of the vessel. And so I'm always astonished that, you know, people are 60 years old and they look 60 years old. It's like, stop it. You know, the health of your organs is the health of your skin. So if your skin looks old, that means you messed up your organs, which means you got to eat differently. You got to exercise. And I see too many entrepreneurs who, they work the long hours, but they're not taking care of the vessel, and they think they get away with that. Nobody gets away with that. It's just tick tock until the whole thing blows up. And so learning to balance that stuff out is important for an entrepreneur because I don't know entrepreneurs who don't work harder than anybody else. And so you can work, you can drive like a Ferrari, but you gotta go in and get the tires changed occasionally.
Entrepreneurs only work half time.
Yes.
12 hours a day.
8 to 8. That my husband and I have that joke all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So Tell us about along your journey. Obviously, we all go through these moments where there's a, oh no, this is a big one. What am I going to do? Tell us about a setback that you had and what you took away from it.
Oh man, I get to choose only one.
I know, right?
I've been an entrepreneur for a long time and have a lot of businesses. I think um, so. I had the most incredible team, and I used to say to them, I would put you up against any Harvard trained, for whatever that means these days, but brilliant MBAs who, in terms of how you can outthink and how you can execute. And at the time, we were going 30% a quarter. The bonus checks were like gigantic. Nobody could even believe it. I was taking care of everybody in powerful ways. And then I did this really brilliant move because everybody said, you need to have a president of your company. You got to like let that one go. And I'm like, okay. And so I hired somebody who immediately told everybody, you only come through me now. You can't talk to Roxanne. Well, about 3 months later, all the good ones were gone. And I was left with people. I mean, I don't want to put this into the public world, but the story is like bizarre about the what had happened to some of these team members and how scarred they were as human beings. And they were incapable of like holding any job, coming into work. They had, notices from doctors that they couldn't work or whatever, and yet they were on my payroll. And I'm on the road like 140 days a year, and this is my team back at the office. And now this person, asked her to move along, and now I got to go back and rebuild a team. And how do you bring good, strong people in to say you're going to work with a whole bunch of people who can't do anything? But there was a lot of good stuff built here before. Trust me, I can do it again. Oh my gosh, it was a nightmare. And it was perfect because now when I talk to a CEO, I had a CEO a couple of years ago, and he would call me every Friday afternoon. He goes, Roxanne, maybe it's me. Maybe I should just quit. Maybe I need to hire a different CEO in the company. I said, it's not you. I said, you got a couple of people and they hijacked your company. We're taking it back. It's going to take a little while, but we're going to get this thing back. He got the second highest culture score in the nation last year. Like 2 years ago, you would have thought we should just throw a match on it and burn the whole thing. I mean, it was just crazy pants every day. But now I have, I always think things happen for a reason. That disaster that happened to me gave me the confidence to go, if I can fix my company when I'm on the road 140 days a year, and I come back to like a whole tribe of people and they're like going all over the place and capable of holding each other to anything and capable of reporting in on how they're doing. And I mean, it was just like, we went from like 100 down to about 2.5. I mean, it was a remarkable story. And if I could build it back again, I have the confidence that I can help any entrepreneur get it back on the rails again. And it's not just the companies that are hurting that come to us. A lot of the companies that come to us are already in the top 5%. They just want to be the best of the best. Those are my favorite because it's like, okay, you're kind of built like me. You want to go, well, how good can this be? I want to find out. I have a passion for being extraordinary.
I love that. Absolutely. So talk to me a little bit about, I know you've mentioned to me at least that you've had some great mentors along the way. What is the value and power of having a mentor for entrepreneurs?
Invaluable. But it's not that you have an entrepreneur originally, it's who's your entrepreneur. And I was blessed. I was blessed with having Nito Cobain as a mentor of mine for 30 years. I would go in and see him every couple of months, and he would bash me all over the place on the things I was doing wrong. You have to have thick skin when you have a good mentor, because they'll tell you. One time he said to me, Roxanne, that's pedestrian thinking. And he said in a whole group of people when there were other people hearing it. And I'm like, well, that's embarrassing. But it was pedestrian thinking. And I'll tell you what, I never have pedestrian thoughts anymore because that just slammed it right out of me. So having someone who has a bigger vision of possibility for you than what you have of yourself is important. Having somebody who doesn't have a need for approval and cares about you enough to slam you around a little bit, I think is important as well. With love and heart, of course, that's the magic formula. But also study with people who have their information in order. This guy is, arguably one of the best business people in the United States today. And so I was very blessed and honored to have him make a strong impression on me.
Yeah, no, I totally get that for sure. And what about the work one can do by themselves? The personal development, professional development, the reading the books, listening to the tapes, podcasts, etc. What do you think of that?
Okay, so when my son was little, my son got into one of the top PhD programs of physics. So we've always really valued education. And so we used to go to church on Sunday mornings, and then we would drive to Barnes and Noble, and we would sit for like 2-3 hours and read books at Barnes and Noble. And then we would each bring home a bag of books and read them that week, and then go back and do the same thing again. There isn't a day that I don't take in an hour and a half or 2 hour of podcasts. Sometimes I just through the transcripts to get it all. I'm constantly reading and learning. I don't know how you create success in life, thinking that you learned it back in high school or college and you're done now. And so, but you know, some of us are built differently. I'd love to learn. For me, somebody asked me one time, why do you read all those books? I'm like, I don't know, why do you breathe oxygen? You know, it's life, you know. It's like, how interesting is life when you're not consuming bigger opportunities and being challenged? And so my poor husband, you know, I come to him all the time going, I got this new idea. I just read this thing. Oh, I'm so excited. And he goes, oh my gosh, she read another book. Oh, she went to another conference. But for me, that's the juice of life, is to constantly be stimulated with, what I've been doing needs to change. I can up my game. And I think people get old because they stop growing.
Mm-hmm. So, big topic these days, artificial intelligence.
Who
What do you
knew?
think about AI, and where is it going? Where is it taking us? How important is it to pay attention?
Super exciting, super terrifying, because nobody knows where this thing goes. I always say, I'm very cautious about how I manage my money and how I put the protections around this, because I always say my prediction is there will be a day where there will be a wipeout of accounts like nobody's business. And so, man, you better be locked down these days, because if you can only imagine, if somebody uses those kind of tools with nefarious intent, really bad things could happen all at once. But what an exciting time. I'm getting more done now, and sometimes in 10 minutes than what would have taken me 7 hours. And so, but originally there's a thing, and it's called critical thinking skills. And so I've been teaching some of my clientele like how to use AI, and then I'll give them an assignment and they'll give it back to me, and I'm like, I can see you brought no critical thinking to this. And so what you get out of AI is kind of like what an intern gives you. And so you have to direct it. And so if you don't have wisdom, that's a problem. I recently attended the National Association of Corporate Directors human capital session. And they were talking about one of the biggest things that boards are looking for now, that is a thing now, didn't used to be a thing, is they want to see the extreme developmental plans for the people within the organization. Well, what they know is these people here are going to be displaced. These people here are going to be clueless about how to do their job. And it's all happening like this. And those who run the fastest to get the right education, which is critical thinking skills, essentially, are going to let's try that again.
So let me just ask you that question one more time, and then I'll cut it together. How about that?
Okay, that sounds good.
No, I don't think that was on my end.
It probably was in my end. You froze on my screen. And it could be me. I haven't taken my computer down. I have about 100 different programs open, so probably is me.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to the same question again.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a second about this crazy thing called artificial intelligence. What do you think about it? Where is it taking us? And how important is it for entrepreneurs to pay attention?
It's so exciting and it is so terrifying. And so that it's really going to be a race to see who figures it out first. And a lot of people don't get it. And what they really don't get, Ridgely, is yes, a lot of these jobs will be replaced, but there'll still be jobs. But man, there's a massive need to retool people, and it's not in skill sets, it's in critical thinking skills. And how do you teach people critical thinking skills? I have a management development certification program, and I give projects to these managers, and I show them, now here's how you can use AI, but I'll know it if you just put it into AI, because what you get out of AI is kind of like what a intern would give you. But when you craft everything together correctly and you redirect or whatever, it's awesome. But there are some people who are just not capable of seeing around the corners and figuring those things out, and they're going to have a tough time in the future. Those jobs are, there will be a group of people that have critical thinking skills, and they will rule the world, kind of like Pinky and the Brain, right? Except for in good ways. They'll have they're the possibility thinkers. They're the ones who can see the if then statements just go live in their brain. They can see, well, that will be a problem, whatever, I need to change it this direction. The people who just take things out of AI and say that's a completion will probably not be able to hang on to those jobs. And that's really sad, because where are they going to go? And I think the big question is, can you really teach critical thinking skills? I think somewhat, but for those who, on the emotional intelligence assessment, you now have a language for that. I have a 7, and here's organization, the people who see around corners, the role will be their oyster. For them, it's obvious how to think through the problems and to direct that. For others, it's going to be more challenging.
What do you say? Because I know you get this, because we all get it from seemingly really smart people who say, I just don't like this AI thing. I'm kind of, no, I'm not, no, not for me.
Well, then I would say, let me hand over a ledger and a pencil and get you to work. Because, right? I mean, it wasn't that long ago. There were typewriters and adding machines with the little tape, and we all seem to make our way through all of that to a different world. I remember going to the CFO of the bank holding company saying, I need a fax machine, and having him say, nobody needs a fax machine. That'll be unnecessary. Well, of course, you know, I'm a puppy dog with a sock in my mouth, so I didn't let go. So I finally got my fax machine, and then that fax machine had something coming through it, you know, every couple minutes. And then, of course, it became irrelevant again. I don't, you know, this is the biggest thing to happen in decades. And those who are in resistance, you know, do they just retire? Well, even if you retire, you still got to function in the world. I mean, the world just shifted underneath our feet.
Yeah, for sure. The thing, I think it's as big as the advent of the internet itself, except much faster.
Yeah.
So the magnitude of
and
it,
maybe bigger, and maybe
yeah,
bigger.
we don't know.
We don't
Okay,
know
so
yet.
here's my favorite question. My favorite question is this. If you could step back into a time machine and go back 25 years and have a conversation of the Roxanne of 25 years ago, what would you want to say to her? And oh, by the way, oh, everything's worked out just the way it was supposed to. Well, that does not count. That's not acceptable as an answer. What would you say to that Roxanne, knowing what you know now?
I would say discern more in hiring. Be much more careful about who gets into your organization. I would say discern more about who you work with as clients. I mean, I have a love fest with my clients. I love them, they love me. It is a love fest. But you know, not everybody fits in, because I don't do well with the folks who don't want to get moving. Because it's like, I can take you to the promised land, but you gotta move. I'm giving you the template, but between sessions, we got to get something done here. And so I think I'd probably be less patient, and which is an interesting thing to say as you get older, because usually people, I've always said patience is not my virtue, but I would tell a younger Roxanne, be less patient. Find the right people, say no to people, only work with those who want to run elite organizations, who already have heart, who are committed to being a top 5%er, who are up to the big game, because they will give you energy back.
Love that. Okay, you mentioned you've read a lot of books. Over the many, many books. If you had to pick three that the entrepreneurs should all make sure they have read and digested, and I know that's a really hard question, but
Well, thank God it's Monday, of course. I always go back to the E-Myth because the first 70 pages makes you want to cry because you go, oh my gosh, my business is a mess and this is out of order and this is out of order. Getting the right structure in business and keeping it simple and having a system to follow. It's still such an impressionable book. So that would make the list. Boy, and then I don't agree with any of like the ones that everybody else says. I mean, those are
well,
good
I will
books.
tell you that here's funny. You would say that, but I'm going to tell you that the E-Myth is the single most recognized one that is brought up by entrepreneurs. That and Think and Grow Rich. Those are the two. E-Myth and Think and Grow Rich are the absolute top of the list.
Okay, funny story about Think and Grow Rich. So my husband was so excited about Think and Grow Rich that he did book club for our kids when they were teenagers. And they all got to bring a friend to the basement. And then every Wednesday, all summer long, they would do book club on Think and Grow Rich. And my daughter was a lifeguard at the time, and she brought her friend. And all of a sudden our son is looking at the friend is looking at her. They've now given us 2 grandchildren. And so, so I gotta say that's a good book too.
Okay. What would you pick?
What would I pick? Man, Ridgely, you asked the hardest questions.
That's my job, right? It's more interesting that way.
One book. I've read thousands. One book. This isn't a business book. It's called The Fisher King and the Handless Maiden. And it is by Robert Johnson. He's a Jungian psychologist. And he talks about the development of the male psyche and the development of the female psyche. And it is so instructional. And so he talks about how for men, as they get to be 20, it's like, I'll be happy when I have a nicer car, a better job, or whatever. And so up until age 50, it's always about the next thing, because they're sure the next thing will make them happy. And then about age 50, for many of them, not all, they're walking down the street one day and they look at the sun setting and their heart just blows wide open. And they go, oh my gosh, I'm just living life. I'm happy because I'm living life. And that's the stop the pursuing the it and be good with what's here. So profound. And for women, the handless maiden, she basically loses her hands and she can't take care of her baby. And for women, we're doers. And we get so caught up with our identity of I got this done, I got this done. It's not about doing, it's about being. And so I would say that's one of the most profound books. That and Debbie Ford's The Dark Side of the Light Chasers on Shadow Side Projection. Because it's like what we like in others is what we like about ourselves. What we dislike about others is exactly the work to do within ourselves. And she makes quite a case for it. You cannot live with your shadow after reading that book. As it continues, you can't continue to deny your shadow.
Awesome. As we're wrapping up, thank you so much for the time. Last words, one last nugget from Roxanne Emmerich to the world. What would you want to leave the entrepreneurs with out there?
I would say seek wisdom. Be about, hang out with the people who have wisdom. Don't buy into the story of the day and the bada bing, bada boom that's in front of you. But instead, find those who have done extraordinary things because they figured some things out. My son was showing me the other day, is one of the top people at a venture capital firm, and he did the analytics. And he said every year, all the way up to age 60, when they stop measuring it, whenever you start a business and you have another unit, you're more successful because you have more wisdom. And I said to him, well, why aren't they measuring after 60? He says, well, a lot of people after 60 stop starting businesses. I said, well, that's crazy. I'm going to start some businesses after 60. That's like, you don't know anything till you're 60, for goodness sakes. And so find people who have wisdom and get them in your club.
Roxanne, thank you so much for all of the wisdom, the insights. I've got tons of notes to share with everybody that I've been taking over here. Great one-liners, really worth writer-downers all over the place. Deeply appreciate you and your time.
Thanks so much, Rosie. It was an honor to be with you today.
Ciao for now, guys.